What separates someone who runs businesses from someone who builds an empire? 3 words. Why not me?
I didn't make it to the NFL, but if I wasn't ambitious enough to believe that I could, I would have never gotten to where I did. And that was the philosophy. So when I go down and I work the Hurricanes, I don't want to just be a contractor. I decided in that moment, I'm going to be ServPro. I'm going to be Service Master. I'm going to build a national franchise. And I started working against that. Why not me?
Today I'm joined by Jeff Dudan, franchise founder, author, and platform builder, to talk about ambition, scaling, and how to think bigger in business. Let's dive in. Well, welcome back to another episode of How I Franchise This. I am super excited about today's guest. This is a guy who has given so much of himself to so many different people, myself included. Jeff Dudan is actually one of my early mentors in franchising. We were doing a laundry delivery business previously, and Jeff showed us the ropes on franchising and has an incredible career in the category. So if you don't know him from all the other stuff that Jeff's been doing, Undercover Boss, his book, his brands, you'll get to know him today. So Jeff, welcome to the show. And why don't we start with a quick intro and what you're working on and building today?
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. Thanks for having me on. Always excited to learn what you're up to and what you're working on. And appreciate the chance to be on here today with Franzy. So yeah, I started in the restoration space, and I built a restoration business, kind of national, international business, and ultimately franchised it, and sold that business in 2019. And then subsequent to that, got involved pretty broadly. That's where we met. I was doing some consulting, advising, helping some people build some brands, built a franchise sales organization. But ultimately, that led me to where I am today. Is in 21, really, and mostly 22, we decided to launch a property service platform called Homefront Brands. So we're currently franchising 5 different property service brands. We do fencing, we do kitchens, baths, and closets. We do exterior building washing. We do roofing, and then we have a B2B offering, which is temporary walls. That is a rental containment. You go to the airports and you see those walls around construction sites. That's what we do. But we do it not only in airports, but hospitals and retail locations. Anywhere there's construction that needs to look clean and safe. And then kind of my give back, which is kind of where I met you. I have a mastermind that I run called Fran Mastery. It's for franchisors, emerging brands. Or really, I thought it was going to be for emerging brands, but we actually have some mid-sized brands that have joined it, because franchising is it's constantly evolving. It's very people intensive, and you can never really have enough good people to bounce things off of. So Fran Mastery is something that I'm doing kind of as my give back to the industry. I'm very interested in making sure that the industry maintains its professionalism, and that the reach and relevance of the franchise industry just continues to grow, because it's a great business model and it helps people.
I completely agree. I mean, I think when we first were exploring it in general and having conversations with you and others, I think we had that kind of healthy skepticism of like, what is franchising? Is it McDonald's and Subway, or is it, all these other, verticals? And the more I've been around it, the more I've grown to appreciate it's exactly what you said. It's a business model that spans multiple industries. And there's times where an industry is doing well and getting a lot of tailwinds, and franchises and independent businesses alike are, doing well. And there's times where they face headwinds, and franchises and independent businesses alike in that category, are struggling. But what I like about it is it's an accessible model that gives people access to ownership and entrepreneurship that they might not have had otherwise. And I've grown to really love it and appreciate it. You just need to know what to look for, and, like any business, what flags to look out for. I like to start, like early in Jeff's career, and you have an awesome story. Where did you first realize you wanted to be an entrepreneur, and what motivated you and sparked some of that early entrepreneurial drive?
Well, I like to say that many entrepreneurs are screwed into existence by circumstances, and you become an entrepreneur when you're unemployable and you're broke, and you need money. So I was always a scrappy kid growing up. I was an athlete, but I knocked around pretty good in the neighborhood, and I always worked. I mean, I always had jobs too, in addition to playing basketball and playing football. I mean, I worked construction, painting, moving and storage. I worked at Chuck E. Cheese. I was in the dog costume at Chuck E. Cheese for a while there. I was I was too tall for the mouse costume. My legs were showing above the boots. But I was just always, and then I washed cars. I did all kinds of things just to make a buck, and so it was very natural for me. And also to one of the predictors of future entrepreneurial success is exposure to entrepreneurship at an early age. And for me, that was my father, who started his career as a structural engineer working for a company, but then he partnered with somebody and they went out on their own. And it wasn't a tremendously successful business. I think at their high water mark, they had maybe 6 people working for them. Some of them were probably contractors. When they had big clients come in, they made me put on a sport coat and sit in a cube just to put some head count in there. I'm 15 years old with a big mop of hair. I don't know who they thought they were fooling, but but I mean, but what I did I watched my father work 7 days a week. I watched him work late. I watched him do whatever it took to make the business go. And for me, I think that made, in hindsight, a big impact on my view of, the ability. Sometimes you just have to hustle, and sometimes you just got to scrap. So when I went to college on a football scholarship to Appalachian State University, I mean, it was 1989. I took my mom's 1972 Buick LeSabre, which was on its last legs. It was a rag top, big sedan, big mobster car. And I drove it across the country and I parked it there and I left it and I never went back to get it. It was a one-way trip. And man, like I had my 5 T-shirts, literally 5 T-shirts and a couple of things in trash bags, and that's where I was in life. Our family, didn't work out traditionally. We had 3 boys, and there was too much month at the end of the money, and we just and that's where I was. So when I got there, I had a football scholarship, so I got sweats to wear, and I got a place to live, and I got food. But man, in the summer, I was on my own, so I talked my roommate into starting a painting business. And we started just painting houses, and you could buy a paintbrush, you could buy a ladder, and I knew how to do it because I had worked for a painting contractor. And at the end of that first summer, we landed jobs painting with student housing apartments. They had, think about this, they're up in the mountains in Boone, North Carolina. You've got these painters coming down from the mountains, and they've got hundreds and hundreds of apartments to paint. And you've got these painters coming out of the mountains that were non-compliant, right? And maybe not the most professional guys. And they said, and we painted a few apartments. They're like, do you guys think you can do, how many can you do? And I'm like, all of them, how many do you have? And so what we did was we went and recruited all the athletes that were taking classes over the summer. And basketball players, they can cut in ceilings without ladders. So can some, so can left tackles, they're like 6'6". And then, wrestlers can scoot around the base moldings, and football players can roll the walls. And we built a business that would paint 15 or 20 apartments in a day. And over a 3.5-week time period, during the lease change, my partner and I split around $76,000 of profit. And I was like, wow. And yeah, and I mean, like the job that I was offered that I was most interested in was a assistant football coach at the University of South Carolina. And I think at the time that paid $12,500 a year. And I had just made 38 grand and whatever, what's half of 76? I don't know. I just made that in 3 weeks. So that was me becoming an entrepreneur. And I really never looked back from there.
That's again, a phenomenal story. I remember you telling me that for the first time, and it goes to show if you put your mind to something, you're willing to go do the work, and take a gamble and a risk, that things can work out and pay off. And it's also, I like the inspiration from your dad. Like you saw, because I think about entrepreneurs a lot, like what made them that way, what gave them that initial confidence to do it, or the risk tolerance to accept all the failure and fear and unknown that comes with it. And I think every person I've talked to, it was either out of necessity, like you said, or they had some sort of role model or mentor that showed them or gave them permission almost to say, hey, this is okay. Like you can do things and it not work out, and that's fine. Get back up and do it again. Whereas I think many of us, many people are shown you've got to get, do well in school to then get into college and get good grades there, and then go get your corporate Fortune 500 job, do that for 40 years and die. And like, that's the path. Unless someone shakes them and says, hey, there is another way. There's another way to do this. It's going to be scary. There's going to be failure. But this idea of failure, we're not really taught it ever. From a very early day or early age, we're conditioned to believe that failure is bad and that if you fail, that you're less than. Versus an entrepreneur, it's like they embrace failure. They know that they're going to get knocked down. They take the punches. They learn to get back up. And it sounds like you had that exposure. You went and took the risk. I'm sure the painting business wasn't all success. There were probably things that didn't work out, and things that you had to learn from. But when you said you didn't look back from there, what does that look like? So you did the painting business. Did you sell it when you graduated? Did you keep doing it? What was next after the college painting business?
Yeah, that's a perfect question, and I want to share that. But I do want to talk about something that you brought up, and it's people. The problem that people have in not starting a business is they don't create enough space for it. And think about life today. Think about kids today. Everything's structured, and you go from this and you go to that. And then when you're not doing that, you're in the car, you're filling your head with social media, and you're filling your head with everything that's on your phone and what's going on there. And then you go straight from here, and maybe you go straight to school and you go straight to college. Where is the vacuum?
Mm-hmm.
And people can't do something unless they've been exposed to it. Mm-hmm. So, it's like people follow the path that they've been exposed to because that's what they think they're supposed to do. So how do you expose young people to, number one, create enough space in their life for them to actually think about what's going on and maybe try some things and create some space for failure, create some space for trying some things out or thinking about something differently. And I mean, just space in their brain, put their phones down for a little bit. It's very difficult. I mean, how many kids are really disciplined enough to, delete their Instagram account for 6 months or their TikTok account for 6 months or things like that? And the reason that so many people that come from nothing end up having the wildest success is because they didn't have anything to compete with. They didn't have anything to fill that gap. Their life was a vacuum. Nature abhors a vacuum. So does my dog. But sorry, that's a Norm Macdonald line. Norm was the greatest. But and you get these entrepreneurs right now, and they're having a full life, but they know that they want to try to be an entrepreneur. But do they have the real courage to take enough things off their plate to give it a real shot? Mm-hmm. And, some of the questions that you sent over were like, well, when doesn't it work or when doesn't it work? Well, it doesn't work when people don't create enough space for focus and to do all the things, right? So when you grow up and you're struggling and, you don't have enough money to do anything, that's a lot of time to do something great. And so, I mean, I think, yeah. So anyway, it's something that I even I'm 58 this year, and man, I'm learning so many things. I'm realizing so many things for the very first time.
Yep. I interviewed Ellen Latham the other week. She's the founder of Orange Theory. And she said this thing to me, it seems obvious when you say it out loud, but she's like, I turned 70 this year. And she's like, I am as curious now as I was when I was 22 or 26 or 30. And she's had this life of learning, and she challenges herself to constantly be open-minded to new ideas and new ways of doing things, even though she's had all this success and has had this full life. I mean, again, 70 years old, she still is like, I'm reading stuff, I'm checking out AI, I'm looking at new ways to work out and move the body. And it's just, I've noticed that's another theme. I mean, you have it, she's got it. A lot of successful people I meet is they have very little ego in what they know and what they understand. I mean, they're compassionate, they're passionate and they have conviction around certain things, but they're never, of this attitude of I already know it all or I've learned enough. It's always like, no, more. You're this expert on, financial stock options. Like, teach me about it. I want to consume it and really get it. And I think you're spot on with that, is like create the space to, learn those things and be curious and continually learn and take that risk when the time is right.
Yeah. And Dan Sullivan is the 80-year-old founder of Strategic Coach, him and his partner Babs. And they've had Strategic Coach for 40 or 45 years. And for those that don't know what it is, they've coached over 20,000 executives. It's a massive business and long-standing, great business full of tools for entrepreneurs. And I was with him out in Phoenix late last year, and he got up and did a 10-minute talk about ambition. And he says, I'm at 79 years old, I filed for 75 patents on my work. And I'm more ambitious. I'm way more ambitious at 80 than I was at 55. And I'll be more ambitious at 90 than I was at 80, because it's our obligation to the universe to be more ambitious next year than we were this year. And the reason is because when you're ambitious, it forces you to double down on and develop capabilities that are dormant or that are underutilized in you to meet the ambitious goal that you've set out to do. And in developing those capabilities, you identify capabilities that you didn't know you needed, but you don't currently have. And now you can go at that. And that fits all into curiosity. Okay. And so, your curiosity is, one of the things that a business does, one of the things that entrepreneurship does. When I talk to our owners here at Homefront Brands, I draw a quadrant up there, and I put businesses in one, and I put real estate in another quadrant. I put stocks, bonds, marketable securities in another one, and I leave one open for them to pursue whatever they wanted to. But I said that is a wealth building model for families. If you look at any wealthy family, generally, they're going to have businesses, they're going to have real estate, they're going to have investments, and then maybe alternative investments, family office investments, private, whatever it is. For me, it's books, a mastermind, it's intellectual, it's a podcast, it's all those types of things, because I like doing those things. I like to give back. But in addition to the businesses are important, because not only do they help you take advantage of the tax code, do they help you do all of the financial things that a business does in terms of write-off, tax code, something that's going to grow while you're sleeping if you build it to scale properly. The thing that a business really does, it allows you the freedom to pursue your own curiosities. Because you choose, do you pay money and go to Strategic Coach? Do you go to the Genius Network? You join EO? Do you get in a mastermind group? Do you take a trip and to go to Necker Island and spend $35,000 to spend a week with Richard Branson? When you have a business, if you're a W-2er, you can't do any of those things, because it's not up to you. Nobody's going to pay for it. Right. So, the first step to creating a life filled with interesting people, experiences, and curiosities is to own a business.
The things the people you meet and the experiences you have alone, I feel like there's a return on that is almost intangible. I used to, early days of 2U, have a lot of imposter syndrome. I was young, like you were when you got into. I was 24 years old.
The beard.
And yeah, I didn't have that then. I looked like a baby, and we had people working for
Alex.
Is that you? But I remember we had 30, 40-year-old, 40 plus, 50-year-olds working for us, and I'm 24. And I told Dan, my business partner, I was like, I'm not a CEO. I'm 24 years old. I'm a kid. I'm just learning how the world's working, and why are these people working here? And he would remind me, he's like, Alex, these people know that. It's not like they don't know how old you are, and they chose to be here. They believe in what you have to say and what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish in the mission. And this thing that you said about curiosity again is, I think at that age, you have this unbridled curiosity and like almost childish optimism. But over time, I think if you stay in a career, a corporate career, you lose sight of that. And as you're getting that experience, it's kind of counterintuitive. You become more equipped to be a business owner and to take this risk. But that curiosity and that willingness to go give it a shot, even if it might fail, kind of dwindles and goes away. And so it's ironic. I was talking about this with someone the other day, is you're probably in mentally one of the best states to start a business when you're young, but from a skill perspective, probably in the worst state to go do it, because you don't have a lot of experience. And then when you do later in life have the experience to have a higher chance of success in doing it, you've lost that kind of curiosity and you become comfortable and complacent. And so I agree with you. You have to be curious. You have to create the space, and then business as that quadrant gives you these intangibles that you can't get anywhere else. I very quickly got over the idea of, hey, I'm 24, I'm not a CEO. I finally came to terms with Like you have to earn your right to be here like anyone else does. And you got to put in the work. And Alex, you're going to do that. And worst case scenario, you're getting an MBA from the streets and from the game of business. And how do you put a price tag on that? You can't teach this in a classroom. You have to go and do it. And so I'm grateful for taking this path. I'm grateful for meeting people like you and just the experiences you have. And I'm curious now, kind of coming back to your story, is like you early on, you get to have this experience that many people, again, don't have the courage to go do or the opportunity to do or whatever it may be. And your eyes probably opened up like mine did. It was like, this is the best thing ever. I can't imagine working for anybody else or doing this like job at Lowe's or whatever it may be. Did you stay an entrepreneur from there on out? You graduate college and you're like, entrepreneur is the life for me and nothing else? Or did you ever get any, corporate or, kind of normal job, experience?
Well, look, yeah, I'll answer that and pick up that story. You guys were impressive when I met you. You were young, you had raised money, you were building the business, you had a tech business. We talked about how expanded. We came up with the brick and mortar concept. Really, you had come up with that. We refined it. I think we named it right here in our training room.
We did. Laundry Lab.
There you go. And that was a lot of fun. But it's up to you as you age, whether you maintain the wonderment and look at the world through the eyes of a child. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that you're not serious. I don't mean that, but like you just have to constantly be amazed. I'm constantly amazed by what people will do, good and bad, right? Mm-hmm. But it's you can't, once you get so set in your ways, in your worldview, that's kind of the beginning of the end, because nothing stays the same. And if you're not just amazed at what's going on, and my gosh, look at the dynamic nature of technology for just the last 3 years. I mean, I never thought I'd see it. Sure, I knew what the singularity was. I had heard about it, right? But it's near,
yeah.
And Ray Kurzweil was right. But
he was spot on. I think he's called it. I mean, he even called the year.
He nailed it.
He called the year that, what was it? I was just talking to someone about this. But I don't know.
It was 2040 originally, like 2040 something was the singularity, I think. And then he started moving it back. And then he wrote a book a couple of years ago that was A Singularity is Nearer with AI. Mm-hmm. And,
what I remember now, it's, he predicts the singularity, but he also calls out all these events leading up to it. And so far he's been like, I'm going to butcher this, 80-90% accurate, which is like, I don't know, scarily, wildly accurate. And it was the year that a computer would beat the best chess player in the world. He was like, it's going to be in 2014 or 2015. And like, sure enough, that's exactly the year it happened. And there's several examples of him doing this. So you read the rest of the story he writes and you're like, oh my gosh, how do you prepare yourself? And that's where, again, I'm doubling down on business ownership and franchising as a way to do that. It's a vehicle to doing that. And I think for the average, person that might not have this, not even average person, but the person that doesn't have this original idea of, I'm going to go start the next Uber or Facebook, but I can be an entrepreneur. I have the skills. I'm good at managing people. I'm good with numbers. I'm good at problem solving, et cetera. It's like franchising is a phenomenal vehicle to go take those skills and create ownership and create enterprise value for yourself in a world where AI is increasingly coming to jeopardize corporate jobs and the way that we all produce income and livelihood in the future. And so I'm trying to pound the table and scream from the mountaintop. If you don't own something today, whether it's real estate or a business, like you got to get going now. Because I think it's the best way to secure yours and your family's future and have ownership, just like owning a home. You want that equity to be building up over time versus leasing a job, essentially.
Yeah. Building. You got to build your kingdom on your own land, not somebody else's land.
Yep.
Yeah. So I graduated from App State, and it was a real important lesson for me in that I went to Florida to chase a hurricane with my partner. There was Hurricane Andrew hit South Florida in '92. We went down there. The end of the painting season was upon us, and our younger brothers came to the school and they were working in the business. So we went down there and made a go of it, helping the people of South Florida recover from Hurricane Andrew. Eventually, I did work for somebody for about 12 months. That was my stint of employment there. We got our own jobs, but there was licensing requirements and all of that stuff. So we threw in with a company, took a job, threw
Okay.
our jobs in with them, took a company, ended up cutting our teeth in commercial work, just huge $5-7 million projects, the insurance restoration game, how insurance worked, all of that. But what I did was and then we decided to start our own business. And we were going to move up to Orlando from South Florida. We had a non-compete that we needed to honor. And there was 4 of us that were going to start the business. And we decided that it was going to be, we were going to each put in $5,000. And I didn't have the $5,000, but I had a truck that my younger brother Mike was putting himself through college there, running the painting business. So I went back up there, went to our local bank when you could still have a relationship with the bank, and I said, "How much can I get for this truck?" And they looked it up and they said, "I could, I'd give you $5,000 for it." So I took a $5,000 loan off of that truck. I took the check. I gave my brother the payment book. And I said, "This is now your truck, and this is your business. You guys are going to run this painting business. Put yourself through college on it." But we took a skim off the top. I mean, we paid them there, and they did the hourly wages and all of that, and then we gave them bonuses. But my partner and I still made money off of that business. So what that taught me was, you can build a business model, you can get clients, you can turn that business over to somebody. They put themselves through college on that business. They paid their rent, they paid their tuition through that business, and I could still make money off of it. So I didn't sell the business, but in a way, I still benefited from the business in a meaningful way for several years.
How did you, I love these like fork in a road moments where, all right, you're doing the college painting business. There's a hurricane in South Florida, and you guys said, "Hey, painting season is up. Let's go down here and help people out." Like, what drove, like, you could have done so many other things in that moment. You could have started a different business or gone to a different part of the country. Like, why was that a, "Hey, we need to go do this" moment?
I don't know. And, I wrote a book called Discernment, and it's really about decision making. And what I did, I looked back over my life at these inflection points, which have 3 things: people involved that you care about, you're responsible for, you want to do something with, sometimes you want to get away from. So it's always people involved in these inflection points. There's an adventure or an opportunity, which there was an adventure. Go to Florida into the teeth of a hurricane. There's billions of dollars of work down there, and see what you can do with it. It's the end of the painting season. What are you going to do anyway? Type thing. And then there's a risk of loss. And if you look at franchise owners getting into a business, they are either going to have to give up a career, a job, some of their 401k, cash, whatever it is. There's also opportunity cost. But so as I look back at these different decisions, I tried to deconstruct how I made them. And what were the filters that I used when I made my very best decisions. And that's what I put in the book Discernment. And just kind of telling these stories and then looking back and saying, how did I really make these decisions, both good and bad? Because at the end of the day, like you are exactly where you are in life today based on the decisions that you made and the actions that you either took or didn't take.
Yep.
That's it. I mean, you and me, we're the same glob of cells as Elon Musk. And there's very little, if you boil us down into a pot, you couldn't tell the difference between all 3 of us, right? But he's made different decisions with different intensity, with no filter. I mean, he has all of the advantageous things from a mental, I don't know what he's got, Asperger's, OCD, AC. I don't know what all he has, but like he's got if he was on Theo Vaughn, he'd be saying, "You got the tisms." He's brilliant, but when he decides to do something, he just works backwards from a future and doesn't stop until he's got it figured out. I mean, there's no filter in that. And where most of us are conditioned by upbringing, early messaging, education, our jobs, fear, to play this game in Minecraft where we just surround ourselves with blocks of self-limiting beliefs. I don't have enough money. I'm not good enough. I don't know how to do that. Nobody in my family's been an entrepreneur. And somebody has to be the one in a family. Like I said, if it's true that exposure to an early entrepreneurial experience is a predictor of future entrepreneurial success, and you didn't have it, maybe it's your job to go out and use a franchise to get into business because you've got a niece or nephew or a son or a daughter or somebody else that's going to watch you do it. And now you're the one in your family that made the difference. You're the one that went through the hard times and got beat up and, had to figure it out and had to risk some of your money and maybe a career, you had to put a career on pause, hopefully permanently, if it works out that way. So, yeah, I mean, but there was big decisions. I mean, there was another decision I made when I had bought out my last partner to buy out my last partner in 2004, and I was $4 million in debt. And we were an asset light business. I mean, we had stuff, we had trucks, trailers, generators, and that kind of stuff. And there was a piece of real estate inside of that. But most of that debt was in receivables from a hurricane we were working in Florida in 2004 that, there's no guarantee we were going to collect that $3 or $4 million out there. It was, but like he was in a spot where he needed to get out. He was having mental health problems. And, and I was like, we had the franchise business with 0 franchises in it.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I signed up. I said, well, I like the team. I like the people. I know the business. I'm going to do it. And just signed on the dotted line and took responsibility for everything. And, and then just worked my way from there.
It is something you said. I like and we interview this way, actually. We go back to not like early childhood, we go back to high school with people essentially. And it's this A method. If you haven't read the book, it's called The Who. I forget who wrote it, but it's this hiring methodology called the A method. And the book is called The Who. We got exposed to it from one of our investors. And he was also the managing director at Techstars when we took the laundry company through it. And he was Peter Thiel's chief of staff at Palantir. And so he had joined when they were about 50 or so employees, and he was tasked with, we need to go hire, eventually 1,000 plus of the world's best engineers. And like, these are better software engineers than Facebook, than Google, because they're working with government contracts. I mean, like the type of work they do is with, the CIA or the government, Germany's government to figure out import-export issues. Like these are billion-dollar contracts. And so the engineers that they have are the best in the world. And he would tell me stories of how you go and identify talent like that and what they would look for. And he shared some of the playbook that they had and PowerPoint decks that they would use for identifying talent. He's like, a lot of this is predicated off of this A method. And when you do it to someone, it's kind of like an interrogation. And it's like you're very, pointed and asking questions, and Jeff might say something. Instead of just taking your answer and moving on to the next thing, you unpack a layer and another layer and another layer of the onion. And the right people love this interview because you're telling all the decisions you've made in life, the good ones, the bad ones, what you learned from them and how they led you to this spot over here. And he told me stories of they hired people that, they might have stole something when they were in high school, and some employers might say, oh, you stole, ding, you're out. We'll just go to the person that never stole. And, they look for perfect instead of the right tool for that specific job, or someone that's self-aware and has a high EQ. And he told me stories that he had of this method working, and I didn't believe him at first until we started doing it. And I'll share just one example, and then we can kind of keep moving on. But there was this guy who came in for an ops role with us, and on paper he was I think it was Harvard or one of the Ivies undergrad, and interned at McKinsey and looked great. Very smart person on paper. And our team was excited about him, I think, because of that. And so then I get to interview him, doing this top grading interview. It's part of the A method, where you take 2 hours with the candidate and you go childhood. What were you like in high school? What did your parents do? What did your siblings do? Why did you go to college? Was it your first choice school or your second? If it wasn't your first choice, why didn't you get into your first choice? Why do you think that was? Not studying hard enough? Okay, where was your work ethic at that time? Like, you're really going in and in and in. And I'm doing that to this guy, and all the answers are great, 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 great. We get to his internship with McKinsey, and he's like, yeah, afterwards I decided not to take a job with them. And I knew to press further. I was like, why would you not take a job at McKinsey after interning there? It's one of the best firms in the world. Like, what was it? He's like, I just thought, maybe consulting wasn't for me, and I decided I wanted to go into maybe more banking or, some other type of category. But I knew when you get these internships in your MBA, they give you an offer at the end of the internship. It's a recruiting ground for them. So I was like, well, did they give you an offer, or did you decide you didn't want to work there? And he said, well, they didn't give me an offer. I'm like, okay, now we're starting to get somewhere, not this perfect answer. I'm like, it's okay if you didn't get the offer, but why do you think they didn't, give you the offer? And he's like, I think they could just tell that consulting wasn't for me. And I was like, that's kind of a bullshit answer too. I was like, what really was going on? Why did you not perform well? Why didn't they give you the offer? And he finally pauses and stops and thinks and looks around. He's like, I've never really had to unpack this and think about it at this level that you're asking me now. And he's like, come to think of it, I think I'm kind of an asshole to work with, is what his answer. And I was like, no way. And he asked me, he's like, is this interview over now? And I'm like, no, I want you to be self-aware and understand, like, why do you think that? Why are you tough to work with? And he's like, look at my resume. I'm a know-it-all. I think I got all the answers. And I think that comes through in my work. And like, he had this like epiphany moment in the interview. And I was just like, holy shit, Tyler Scriven was the guy who taught us this. I was like, Tyler was right. This method, when done correctly, really sets the company up for finding the right people, because you're taking this 50-50 coin toss, which is most interviewing, and stacking the deck in your favor and making it more 80-20 that you're going to get the right person, because you're really drilling into who the person is at their core, not just what job experience they had or what the story is on paper. So I think
what happens? You probably may or may not can't say, but were they qualified for employment with you?
So we ended up not hiring him because of a cultural fit. I mean, his acknowledgement of like, I'm really hard to work with, and sometimes I'm not a team player, and like, we really valued those things. And so even though he was the smartest person here, he would have been the smartest, book person on our team. It just culturally, especially as a small team, it was too important to not let someone who's going to be a challenge and maybe kind of, again, self-admitted an asshole on the team.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure he's doing really well now. And we had another lady come through who had got arrested for stealing money from her company, when she was 18 years old. She was now a 47-year-old woman. She had went to jail for a little bit for this. She was the controller at a $100 million revenue business at that point. So like, she had learned her lesson. She had understood that what she did when she was 18 years old was bad, and has built this incredibly successful career in finance around other people's money again. And so even though she had done that once, doesn't mean she's a bad person for the rest of her life. And that's what I like about this method is, and she didn't have to tell me that. Like, it was kind of buried. I think it was, I don't know if we would have found it in a background check, and she felt comfortable volunteering it and talking about what she learned about that moment because of the style of this interview. And so I'm always preaching to people, read the book, The Who, check out the A Method. It is a very unique but very effective method for interviewing and identifying talent.
I'm going to order it right when I get off the pod.
It's really good. It's good. Talk to me about AdvantaClean. I mean, like, you built this massive company that some people listening might not be aware of, and I think a lot of inspiration, and I think others listening get inspired by and interested in these like empire building type of things. You go from painting business to chasing an opportunity in Florida. When does it become a scale, like large? You buy your partner out, you're building this huge thing. When did Jeff say, I'm swinging for the fences versus building a good business, but really going for it at that level?
Yeah, so I think it's important for people to intentionally speak a bold future into their life. And for me, starting that business in 1994 with my partners, I had the ambition to build it into a national franchise brand, because my exposure was that when I went down and cut my teeth in the insurance restoration disaster response business, I observed that it was heavily franchised. It was ServPro, it was Paul Davis, it was ServiceMaster, it was lots and lots of franchise brands. And there was some big independents as well. So when we started the business, I said, hey guys, this is great, and I'll start the business, but I just don't want to live as a contractor in Central Florida. I want to, and I was probably, I was 26 at the time. And I said, hey, if I'm going to do this with you guys, I want it to be a national franchise brand. That's why I'm doing it. So we hired our first franchise attorneys in 97 just to get some information on it. We started the franchise business in 2000. But this is where alignment really matters. I think my partners humored me, but I don't think any of them really believed me. So, we started the business in 94. In 95, I moved up to Charlotte to get married and start our second location. We ended up becoming a government contractor, so that led us all over the world. I mean, we worked on government contracts in the Caribbean. We did a lot of work in Puerto Rico. We did military bases and VA hospitals all over the country, Hawaii, California. And we ended up getting national accounts with big box retailers as well. And we responded to every hurricane that made landfall, mostly in the southeastern United States and the Caribbean is where we worked, all the way over to Texas. I mean, we did respond a little bit to, I think, the earthquakes out there in California, but most of our stuff was east of the Mississippi, unless a contracting partner or government facility out west, for a specific job. And we opened up offices around the Southeast. So we had half a dozen offices at one time. We ended up selling 4. So I bought my last partner out in 2004. And again, here comes inflection point. We hire a consultant. They show us the light. I end up investing in tractor trailers of equipment and generators and campers and fleets of pickup trucks with diesel tanks in the back. Preparation meets opportunity. Here comes Hurricane Katrina in 2005 into the Gulf Coast. We respond down there for what would end up being a 4-year response, doing about $100 million worth of work. A lot of it was government teaming partners, a lot of government work, a lot of work in downtown New Orleans and shutting down the New Orleans VA, lots and lots of big projects down there over the next 4 years. So our team was down there. But after we had set up, I was driving home, and I was driving from Gulfport, Mississippi to Charlotte, North Carolina. I was driving through the middle of the night because I was missing my son's first football season. Mm. And I had 3 kids at the time. And, and what had happened with the business was I was never home. I mean, I was always on the road. There was always something going on. And it was one thing to another. And I decided at that point, which was a decision filter, that I said, well, I need to be home for dinner. I don't want to be absentee. So I made the decision in the middle of the night that I was going to sell all of our company stores under the franchise model. I would keep our commercial services and government contracting division. That would feed me. And I would sell Orlando, Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, Columbia, and Charlotte under this franchise model that was just sitting on the shelf over here, because a lack of focus will always lead to a lack of greatness. We had it. It was there on paper, but there was no time being put into it because the business was growing. And so that's what I did. So in 2006, 7, and 8, we sold our company stores under the franchise model, and we kind of cut our teeth and figured out, we ran call center, we ran centralized technology. We were pretty early to the game in a lot of centralized things because we already had the infrastructure set up. So we just created rooms in the inn for the franchise owners, and they worked kind of on our shared systems, and which worked out really. We were early adopter of Salesforce. We kind of bent it to our will. They were coming out at that point in time with multi-tenant tools, things like that. You could build a little bit on Salesforce back in the early days. And then we launched, timing is everything. I mean, we were in 2009. I mean, we had been building the business for 15 years, and then we became an overnight success, right? Because coming out of 2006, 7, and 8 was the great financial crisis. And there was all of these executives that were out of jobs, that had lost their 401ks, that were underemployed. And, we were a recession-resistant, high-margin, third-party payer, insurance paid. We looked like the safest high-margin business that you could possibly get into. And then when you came to our shop, I mean, you saw we had all the stuff. We had all the toys. Yep. I mean, here's a call center full of people. Here's a parking lot with 44 vehicles and campers and semis and trucks in it. And it's like, I can be part of this, so it wasn't, we weren't selling our franchise from a strip center, next to the Dairy Queen there. I mean, we had broad, we had broad shoulders and good team, good people, good culture, good centralized services, good marketing, and strong technical expertise is what our franchise owners would say about us. If there was 4 things that they would generally validate to, without even being asked. So, so we ended up with, we did 240 locations in 37 states. And I sold the business January 1st, 2019.
I mean, it's a heck of a ride. And I remember when we first met, just hearing the story, and again, it's inspiring. There was something that we kind of glanced over, and that was, hey, I told my partners early on that like I want to build a national franchise brand. At first, they're like,
Yeah.
"Ah, okay, yeah, there's Jeff with the ambition, or what, whatever your guys' relationship dynamic was. What inspired you to do that? Did you see someone else do that? Did you read about it? Like, how did you know that, hey, I want to build a national franchise specific brand versus just like a huge company, or I want to take over the Southeast, or
Mhm.
like where did like, that's such a specific goal at such a young age too. What sparked that?
Look, man, three words that'll change your life. Why not me? Why not me?
Hmm.
I talked about ambition. When I heard Dan Sullivan, I'm 57 years old, and I hear him talk about ambition, and I immediately connected dots in my life that I'd never connected before. When I was in high school, I didn't play football till I was a junior in high school. Everybody else had plays from their time they're 7 years old. I had no skills. I was a basketball player. And all of a sudden, we got a new coach. He wants to throw the ball. He comes and recruits me off the basketball court. I'm playing 1 year as a receiver who caught the ball and fell down. I didn't know how to block, tackle, line up. I didn't know how to get into 3 points. I knew nothing, right? But I decided in that moment that I was going to play for the Chicago Bears. Okay.
Why
Okay.
not?
Well, look, I was watching. They had a fullback that looked like me. They had a tight end that looked like me. They had a safety that looked like me. I was about size, weight, speed, whatever. I was a little slow, but this goes to capability. So now I start making decisions against that future. Okay. So I walk on to the University of Northern Iowa. My grades were too bad for me to get a decent scholarship. I was a bad student. Just say it. I wasn't a great student. I walk on to the University of Northern Iowa, take a student loan to go, basically fail out, drop back to a junior college in Chicago. But what I learned was, and my grandfather told me this, is I was too slow to get a Division I scholarship. I didn't have straight line speed. So I said, all right, well, I got one chance. I just failed out of college. I'm back in home now. I'm going to get caught up in all the things that led me to be a bad student. Or what I can do is I can figure out what it's going to take for me to get out of here. And I knew that my straight line speed, when I went to University of Northern Iowa, these guys were flying, dude. They were flying, right? And I was good laterally. I had good quicks, man, and great hands, and good size and in all the things, but I didn't have the straight line speed. So what is speed? It's strength, explosiveness, and flexibility. So I joined Taekwondo, and I went every week for 3 or 4 times a week, and I got flexible. I got in the squat rack. I got on the plyo, and I watched Walter Payton run up a hill. So I found a hill, and I ran up the hill over and over and over again. And I got just fast enough to get a ton of Division I scholarship offers. And I picked Appalachian State University for a specific reason, because the coach flew home with me and said, you can go to these other big schools. He said, but you'll be a star here. You'll play here. Mm-hmm. And I said, and we have an accredited business school. We just put Dino Hackett and John Settle in the NFL. And if you come here, you will be our starter. And I said, you know what? I'll go. It's beautiful out in North Carolina. I'll go. Mm-hmm. So I come out there and, end up having a decent career and starting the painting business and all of that. And then I go down to South Florida, but I ended up starting my senior year as a running back. So as a guy that was too slow to get a scholarship ends up, and we played Clemson. I walked out as a captain. I walked out first in the tunnel, 77,000 people. And I was on a kickoff return team, and I was starting in the backfield, So I didn't make it to the NFL, but if I wasn't ambitious enough to believe that I could, I would have never gotten to where I did. And that was the philosophy. So when I go down and I work the Hurricanes, I don't want to just be a contractor. I decided in that moment, I'm going to be Serve Pro. I'm going to be Service Master. I'm going to build a national franchise. And I started working against that. And for the next 25 years, we built that. And then I sold that. So now with Homefront Brands, I look around and I said, well, there's a half a dozen platforms. There's Neighborly, there's Authority, there's 5-Star, there's First Service Corporation. There's these other ones all around out here, right? So again, I said, why not me? Why can't I built one brand? Why can't I build a platform and be one of the top 10 or 12 franchise platforms and property services in the world? So that's you have to.
That's the drive.
You have to be ridiculously ambitious if you want to create enough space to grow up into and live the life that you deserve to live.
That's really, really well said. There's so many people that I meet that are just not thinking big enough. They have all the capability, they have all the skill, they have the personality, the charisma, but they're just not thinking big enough. And Elon Musk has this thing. He's like, take your 10-year plan and try to do it in a year or two. And you're going to fail. You're not going to hit your 10-year goal, but I guarantee you're probably 5, 6 years into, or a lot further along than you thought you might be. And it's just reframing and thinking bigger. I had a similar experience when we did the laundry business and I left EY. People would ask me like, why are you leaving this big four consulting thing to do a laundry business? And I was like, because I know if I don't do this, someone else is going to go start it up and do it. And I'm going to sit there and be the guy who was like, I had that idea once, but I never did anything about it. And I don't want to hit 30, 40, 50 years old and sit there and have that regret hanging over my head the rest of my life. And so I think for people listening that have had some idea or are wanting to do something, it's like think bigger. And then also, what Jeff's saying, why not you or why not me? And, get after it. I do want to, talk about Homefront, brands a little bit more because it is, you've had a ton of success in your career. You said you're 57. Like many people would say, Jeff, why aren't you just like golfing or at the beach or whatever it is that you want to do? Why double down and get back into not only another franchise brand but a portfolio of half a dozen of them? It's
I'll tell you, one of my biggest Achilles heels is I'm not financially motivated enough, and I've got to have great finance people around me, and I do. I make sure that we have great finance people around me, that we got the people that are watching the dollars, that are people that are, I'm sales motivated, right? But, when I sold the business AdvantaClean, I had already been in business for 25 years. I had accumulated real estate. It didn't really change. And it changed the bank balances a lot, but it didn't really change anything else. And, it was great. But you hear people after they sell a business, they lose their, my identity was wrapped up in that a little bit. So I worked hard before we sold the business to decouple myself from the business from an identity perspective. But I chose to sell the business at that point because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I did know that I wanted to do something different. And maybe I wanted to create the space and the resources to do whatever I wanted to do. So I didn't start Homefront Brands really till around 21. So there was a period there where I was doing lots of things, and working with you guys was one of them. And, and it was doing lots of things, but a couple of, fundamental, but it goes back to like, what are your decision filters? I didn't want my kids to see me doing nothing. I didn't want to take when I came off the road, I coached over 37 seasons of my kids' athletics. So I'm a coach, right? I like to coach. I like to build. A franchise is just, at Homefront Brands, we have 250 families of 5 to 10 teams. It's just little teams, it's like little football teams out there, doing their thing, trying to win in the marketplace. So, that's a good fit for me. So I really wanted to do that. But the other thing was, look, I took a hard look at what was going around in our country in 20 and 21, and there was a lot of unrest. And, and honestly, capitalism is, the middle market creates 90% of new jobs. Families owning businesses keeps our country strong. It protects our way of life. People need entrepreneurship. If AI is going to dislocate certain industries and certain jobs, people need to survive. People need to provide. So me going back into business and just looking at everything that was going on and look at everything that was coming, I thought it was more important than ever to create good businesses for families to own, for families to operate. And then that allows me access to these people, right, to be able to impart the rest of what I talked about, the 4 quadrants of wealth building and, and being a good citizen in your community and making a difference in that way. It's all the things that, ultimately matter. In terms of, yeah, man, I could fish every day and golf every day and drink every day and do all those things. But I just, why would I have spent 25 years accumulating all of these capabilities and then just put them on a shelf somewhere because I'd reached some balance in my bank account. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's a ridiculous thought to me.
a
And
hundred percent.
you die, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
you die.
exactly. It's very well put. Like a lot of people that I think keep just going and going, like your Elon Musk, you take all the way at, the best, one of the best entrepreneurs ever in the world, all the way down to, the guy running a 50 million a year business or the guy running $1 million a year business. Is a lot of the times, it might start out as there's a drive for some sort of financial freedom, but then I think they eventually get there and they realize that it was this journey that I enjoyed so much, and the skills and the people and the relationships I've met along the way that like really filled me up and made me happy. And yes, now I'm taken care of, my family's taken care of, but I have so much more to give back into this, this community that has helped me get to where I am today. And Mark Cuban has this quote that I love. I think about it, weekly probably. It motivates me a lot. Is he's like, the best thing you can do to contribute to society is build a big effing company. Because if you do that, you're going to create a ton of jobs. You're going to impact a ton of customers. You're going to pay a shitload of money in taxes. And hopefully the government does the right thing with those taxes and redistributes them to those, in the most impactful way possible. But he's like, that's the biggest impact you can leave on your life and the community around you, is build something massive, and with that all these other massive positive outcomes come with it. And I kind of hear you saying that as,
Yeah.
hey, I'm a gifted surgeon that could help all these people. Why would the surgeon stop helping people? Like I as Jeff have accumulated all these skills, put them to use.
Yeah. And think about like franchising is more democratic because these franchisees own their equity. It's if you build a big company, that's fine. You've got all your employees in there and they've got stock options and they got all of those things. But I mean, we're really building entrepreneurs.
Yep.
And we're deploying them across the country. We're giving them a vehicle with which to do it.
I love that. Is there anything, within Homefront that you'd want this audience to hear? I mean, it's a phenomenal set of brands. A lot of people listening have heard your character, your story, and knowing that your leadership's behind this, that character is going to show through into each of those brands. Was there anything specifically with the brands that are worth highlighting or calling out?
They're good brands. They all have different profiles. They have all got different customer sets. I think, I could talk a lot about how we do it, operationalize it, our view of it. But I mean, we're talking to potential candidates here probably. So it's like, hey, we understand when we looked at the hundreds of businesses that we had to choose from to put into this platform, that we wanted to attract serious, sophisticated, well-capitalized business owners that wanted to build a platform for themselves. Excuse me. So, we selected these businesses very intentionally, that when somebody's a high net worth people that's had success in their career, that not only would they see the tools and the leadership that they were accustomed to at the successful large companies that they worked at, that they would look at the economic opportunities and the margin profiles of these businesses, and they would say, this is worth me building. We're you hear all this talk in franchising about this responsible franchising, and I always look at the inverse. Are you saying that everybody's irresponsible? I don't think so. But there's a lot of there's 4,000 franchise opportunities to choose from, man. There's a lot out there to choose from. But we choose here to focus on outcomes. And like we are very intentional about, okay, if you get into a business, we're not trying to enslave you to work for this business and be up on the hill here and everybody's out there working for us type thing. It's, what are you trying to solve in your life? Is this a good use of your time, energy, your money, your opportunity cost? If you could build this business and sell it, sell is not a 4-letter word. I mean, it's a 4-letter word, but it's not a 4-letter word, right? So if you can sell your business in 4 years or 5 years and you've done well along the way, and now you get an opportunity to get resourced, to be able to go take your capabilities and what you've learned here and we've poured into you as an entrepreneur personally and professionally, and now you've got some resources and you can take that and go build something else greater and contribute to society and the country and capitalism, then that's what we want you to do. We understand that if we're going to reach our goals, that we have to create, we don't want people to get into a business and sit on it.
Hmm.
We want people to continue to build. And, part of it is that's kind of what you're hiring us for. I mean, you're
Hmm.
hiring us to create, to have opportunities that are big enough that you're not going to get capped out. And the beautiful thing about property services businesses is, look, I know there's a lot going on with immigration. It changes every few years. But any way you slice it, man, there's going to be 150 million more people in this country by 2050. There's already a housing shortage of the types of houses that people want to live in. The supply demand curve is in our favor because kids aren't doing this work anymore. Look at what it costs to have homes done, work done in your homes. And when all of these new homes are going to be built to accommodate all of these people, and there's all the new housing, the retail, the schools, the institutions, the hospitals, all of the infrastructure has to come with it. Those are the places where home and property services exist. And so I like to say, like you will never find a Homefront Brands business nestled between a Blockbuster video store and a Curves fitness franchise.
Party City.
Yeah, there's no obsolescence, in home services, and there's a 10.3% compound annual growth rate. If you want to talk about McKinsey and everybody else forecasting this, so you can get into one of these businesses and not even have to steal a job from somebody. And then when you want to grow, it's not like fitness where you got to buy another building or a restaurant or things like that, where you got to put another box out there with massive investment to grow your business because you're maxed out. You add another salesperson, maybe another truck,
Hmm.
or you get better at sales and you raise your average ticket, or you raise your prices, and there's all of these mechanisms to do that are not you don't have to add more overhead to add more sales generally in a property service business. And because there isn't a building, we do have a very cost-effective build out in our designery little Apple showroom type thing in a Class B space. They're low cost. So,
Hmm.
the last thing I want to do is get a franchise owner into a $800,000 build out with $1 million lease guarantee and hope
Right.
they can do it. No, these are low cost businesses. I mean, you'd show up and do anything, you're going to be fine. We can get you out. So, for us, it's a very adult conversation about outcomes and saying, hey, you're going to get the outcome you deserve, but I can show you a path to outcomes at all different levels, if you're willing to show up and do the work. And so that's kind of our philosophy at Homefront Brands. We talk about that a lot. Work's hard. Business ownership's hard. No, don't let anybody out there tell you it's the easiest thing you're ever going to do, but you don't want it to be, because it won't stretch you if it is.
Yep, that's really well said. And we work with hundreds, if not thousands, of clients looking at different concepts. Those 4,000 you mentioned, and so often I find our team recommending home services brands because it is so accessible. There's not all the overhead, like you said, and it's one of the few or rarer instances where the output is directly correlated with the work you're willing to put into it. Some concepts, you build a location and it's there. You might have gentrification or a competitor come in or whatever it may be, versus home and property services, there's a territory and you can get creative and you can put your own time and effort into it. And so, I like it for a lot of people who have that chip on their shoulder. They're willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work. And to your point, it's not mailbox money. You gotta, it's still a business that you own, that you're running,
Sure.
and you gotta roll up your sleeves and get to work, just like you did back in the day, going down to Florida and working with your partners and drumming up business. And it's this 15-year overnight success that you gotta be ready to commit to. But out the other end of it, you're going to be a more probably intelligent operator. You're going to be a better people manager. You're going to be a more skilled entrepreneur. And you're going to have gotten that street MBA, which again, I can't put a price on, and the happiness and the fulfillment that comes with getting to do work like that, the privilege of getting to own your own business and work for yourself and with other great people. Well, Jeff, I know we're coming.
Well said.
Go ahead.
It is a privilege. Yeah, I like your use of that word. It is a
I
privilege.
mean, every day I feel very grateful that I get to be here working on the things I'm working on. And sure, there are days that it's hard and it's stressful and you make mistakes and you fail. But I found something early in my life, and you did too, that I think some people never do. And that's the freedom and the fulfillment that comes with doing your own thing at your terms. And I'm just so passionate. Like, how do we get other people educated on this? Because once you're in it and you do it, it's like the best drug in the world. It's addicting. All of this, like, goodness comes from it. And so I'm just again, from the mountaintops, trying to get people to get exposed and educated to the franchise business model. So thank you for coming on the show today, sharing your story, sharing Homefront Brands and your journey. I've got one or two like quick hitter questions if you've got a second. I know we're at the hour.
Yeah. I saw your quick hitters. I don't have answers, but go ahead and hit me with it. Let's see
one
what
or
pops
two of
out.
them. Yeah, I want to know what the hardest decision you've had to make as a leader is, and how did that stick with you?
Gosh, I saw these on the list. I saw these on the call sheet. Hardest decision I've ever had to make as a leader. Many people get family involved in their business. And I see it that our franchise owners do it. And I would really caution franchise owners to make sure that if they're going to put a family owner in their business, that they are properly skilled. They've gone through the WHO interview for the role that they're in, because there's already a stigma about family in business. They don't need to be good enough to do the job. They need to be the best, because other employees looking at family members doing things, they're already going to have a challenge with it, right? So like you got to play that straight. And, and if you get a situation where a family member is not performing in the role, you have to be fast. You have to be more assertive in remedying that situation. So, over the 25 years, and it just happens, right? Oh, the brother-in-law needs this, or the father-in-law is retiring, and, all of these things. Like there is the hard decisions. The hardest decision for me, because I'm family, I have a family orientation, is when I've had to make decisions around family members in the business.
Yep. You're spot on. I think there's a stigma because too often people work with a family member out of convenience.
Yeah.
I actually think if it's a family member who is good at the gap that you have or the role that you have, it's like one of the best things in the world, because you have
100%.
this deep trust and great relationship. You can have the hard conversations, but the most important part, I think, is the skill set has to be there. And if it's a business partner, you need to complement each other. You don't need two Alexes or two Jeffs. Like, if you complement each other, it's like one of the most beautiful things ever. But too often people purely do it out of convenience.
Well, I've had it. I've had it where it's been a wild success, and there's still a stigma with it. But the challenge in franchising for those who are getting ready to jump into franchising, if you're listening here, is that your first people have to make you go. And if you hire a bunch of family members and then you're slow to remedy those situations and they're draining your cash early before you've established your business, it can be a critical error. And that makes it twice as hard to make the changes that you need to make.
Yep. Completely agree. All right, last one. I know you're a very kind of disciplined, ritual-oriented individual. Is there one habit that's had an outsized impact on you as a leader, or you in your career?
I think the best thing that I do is I have always had a ritual in the mornings of deciding what the most important things were that I needed to get done in the day. And currently I use the 5-minute journal by Alex Icon. It's IKONN. It's a $29 journal, but it's this beautiful little journal. So, your brain waves are the closest they are at flow state from a sleep state. So when you wake up in the morning, the moment you start scrolling on your phone, you've changed your brain waves out to a less productive brainwave state. So getting up, my morning, I get up, I'm like a 4:30 guy, man. My eyes pop up, I'm wide open, and get up, get a cup of coffee, pet the dog. Don't grab the phone right away. Grab the journal. So I'll do my journaling like that. And then I'll generally get a workout in. and do a workout, and then generally I'll do a sauna after that. But like during my, so I've got my journal, so I've kind of already organized like what's my gratitude for the day, what am I thankful for, what's going to make, what are the most important things I need, what make today great, and some of those are tactical, but some of them are also reminders about how I need to be, how I need to show up. So that part of the ritual, then getting a workout in, making sure that you're healthy. I mean, at the end of the day, and the older I get, the more important it is that I maintain the energy and all of that. And then when I get in the sauna, I'll work to my calendar, but not a to-do list. And I'll make sure my calendar's set, as opposed to 55 to-dos and things like that. So, and again, I'm resetting my calendar to make sure that I'm accommodating enough time to accomplish the things that I've already decided are the most important. So I think ruthless prioritization of the things that matter over time. It always seems to keep me over the target.
Yeah, I think it's a really good tip. Well, Jeff, for anyone listening, if where can they find you? Where do we want to send them right now?
Okay, homefrontbrands.com is a great place to go if you are a franchisee or you want to look at our brands, engage with us anyway. Just homefrontbrands.com. You can get to all of our brands there. Top Rail Fence, The Designery, Roof Scientist, Temporary Wall Systems, and Window Hero are all on the website. You can get to them there. If you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is fantastic for me. If you want to go to my LinkedIn and connect with me, that would be great there. If you go to my Instagram, which is just Jeff Dudan, and you can get a free copy of my book, Discernment, by clicking on the link right there on my Instagram and just put your name and email in there. You'll get an electronic copy immediately into your email. So you can get a copy of my book, Discernment, help you with these decisions there. And if you're interested in me as a speaker, or if you're a franchisor and you're interested in taking advantage of some of the coaching and mentoring stuff that I do, just to kind of give back to the community, you can go to jeffdudan.com and you can find your way to Fran Mastery through there.
Awesome. Jeff, thank you again so much for all you've done for me personally as I've navigated my entry point into the franchise business model, but for all that you've done for all of the franchisees in your system and the franchise industry as a whole and the broader business community. Really appreciate you taking your time to share your story and wisdom. And can't wait to catch up again here soon.
Yeah, man. Always a pleasure, Alex. It's great to talk to you. I'm really happy for all your success.
Thank you.